So, like I was mentioning earlier, you can't look at AI and the technology behind it in isolation. You've actually got to look at the security controls that are deployed across your organization. So you'll notice some more stats for you over here, that shadow IT is going to reach 75% of employees in 2027. Think of AI and AI agents that you deploy as an extension of your existing staff. Your staff are going to be using AI quite frequently in the organization. It's going to expand its use even more. And so the risk associated with shadow IT that was already in place just gets amplified. So a lot of the risk that you would have with insider risk as well, with employees sometimes doing things they maybe potentially should not do, or maybe doing things that they may not know is what's right, what's wrong, what's allowed, what's not. And then they're using AI to kind of continue their work and do further try to do what they're doing as part of the daily job. And that further amplifies some of those risks as well. So something that I guess to keep in mind is, especially for Australian charities, you can see 48% growth of cyber risk in based on some of these stats recently. Yet only 22% of not-for-profits have a formal AI policy. So that's an area of focus for us. And if you don't mind going to the next slide, please, Raji. You'll see there's a lot of stats and there's a lot of information about risks around AI. And the question that potentially arises is, where do you actually start? Like, what's the starting point? How do you start to get a handle on some of this risk? And how do you start putting in security controls? So a good starting point would be initially to understand the role that AI plays in the business. Like, what's the business strategy? What's the mission of the business? And where does AI and the use of AI actually fit in that? You need to assess then the maturity of your environment. Do you actually have the tools and the capability to deploy AI solutions across the business? Have you identified the threats that come with this? Have you done any form of threat modeling? And have you evaluated the effectiveness of your controls? So if you do see threats coming in, what controls do you have in place? And then do you have a formal way of measuring the risk that comes with that? And even to put these 4 things in place, you're going to need some kind of guidance, and you're going to need a governance structure of some form. So what we recommend, the very first step on this security and risk journey for AI is to establish an AI governance process internally. And even with an AI governance process, where do you actually start with establishing an AI governance process? It's not as simple as just looking up a template for an AI policy and deploying that and saying that you're ready to go. There are a few different things that you have to consider. Firstly, what's the reference base that you're using? There's various references out there. You can use the NIST AI RMF. You can use ISO 42001. It's a standard. So are you going to choose a framework? Are you going to choose a standard? What actually applies to your business? There's a lot of thinking that goes behind that. So we also understand that not-for-profits may not have all the funding and the resources at their availability to actually go in and start implementing these programs of work. And I guess that's where we help a lot of our customers as well, just to get started on that journey. You can't really necessarily, implement all the security controls in one big bang, but you got to start somewhere. So start with understanding what framework you're going to adhere to, and then based on that, create some documentation internally. That could be as simple as an AI acceptable use policy. You could start there, and then create AI standards, procedures, and other documentation behind that. A risk register is really handy as well, just standard IT security hygiene. And a key aspect is to assign some roles and responsibilities within the organization. So who are your champions for AI security and risk? Identify those, implement those into the policy as well. There are specific AI-related considerations as well. So Raji touched on transparency earlier as well. There's ethics, there's bias, especially in the NFP sector. A lot of these are quite important. And so you need to consider these when you're actually building in your policies as well. And lastly, just understanding the AI lifecycle and managing risks across that entire lifecycle. That could come through in the form of risk register, but you will also need those champions coming in and helping you along the way, doing that evaluation of risk throughout that AI adoption lifecycle. This is very high level, of course, but we're happy to, happy to jump into a more detailed deep dive on a separate session with you as well. I'll hand back to Raji, I believe, at this point.
Yeah, thank you. So what we're going to do, so we're going to open up for there's a couple of questions in chat. We'll try to get to them. The next section is where we go into some of those things we talked about. So some of the challenges around shadow AI and the policy stuff. There's a couple of questions coming up as well. And then some of the new things you can do as well. And then we'll talk about some examples and some basic, foundational things you can do. So I'll just go into the questions here. So the first one is actually from Cyril. There's a long question, but I'll read it out to you. Our NFPs use M365. One of our suppliers' end user license agreement for image stock specifically prohibits any AI or machine learning use of their licensing content, including uploading images to tools such as Microsoft Copilot and other Gen AI platforms. From practical and technical perspective, what controls would you suggest to prevent supplier license assets from being inadvertently ingested, indexed, and processed by AI systems? There's a long question, but basically what it's saying is, it says your content you're using, there's a restriction around using that in AI tools, and how do you address that? So there's two parts to this. One of the things that we do is, especially around Microsoft Copilot, Microsoft environment, we'll talk a little bit more on that. We do a security assessment around the controls that you can put in. So basically out of the platform and the environment, there are certain controls settings and controls that you can adjust to prevent certain aspects of it. And in some cases, it's not good enough, or it doesn't have the settings or not yet available to restrict certain aspects, especially in this scenario. And this is where the education and training comes in. It's a combination plus your policies. So you're enforced by policies, you have standards, you have education and literacy within your organization, plus you restrict from environment and tools. It's not just one thing about restricting, and because there's always going to be a way to solve that problem, but it's about like a multi-pronged approach. The other option is to have your own internal like a chat model that can help with all those controls. But again, you still need the policies, you'll need the training and literacy. There's another question that came in. Do you have any example of an AI acceptable use policy you can share? What we'll talk about is there's an AI policy review that we can do, or if you some advisory, we can probably take that offline, but we can definitely help you with that. Advanced teams specializes in that. And whether you have an AI policy already, or you're looking to build one, we can help you with that. And then there's a piece of work that associated with that. So we are reluctant to share anything generic at the moment from an AI policy point of view, but because it has to be catered to what you need. So we'll definitely have some way of addressing that challenge as well.